Today I'm going to be painting this forest scene for my next one, and I'm not gonna lie, this one was very difficult. I think why it's difficult is there's no obvious shapes to start with. If you've seen any of my videos before, I start with the color fill tool and these big shapes I'm doing now, as you can see there, and then trying to come up with the rough underlying color before I start highlighting and adding detail and things like that. But for this one, you can only really see, well, it's hard to see anything, to be honest. So, but I still try and go with my process, which is big shapes to smaller shapes, and get a rough guide to where you're gonna put things. So it's no different from any other painting I've done. Is I try to block out the big shapes and roughly the color, not that accurately, because we, especially in Procreate, it's quite nice. You can do the hue saturation, change thing at kind of any point. I keep the big shapes on each separate layer so I can do that. It's very rare that I actually don't change the color. So to say, I say this all the time, don't worry about the color too much, especially digitally, because we can change it, right? So, but I mean, at some point we have to commit, but early on we don't. So still, I'm trying to get the big shapes. Now, obviously, we have these trees here, which are not exactly big shapes, but they are a big presence in the painting. So we still need to block them in. And I would argue, like together, they're still a big shape. So we need to get them in there. I'm using a technical pen, by the way. It's the only brush, I generally use. I generally only use two brushes, a technical pen and soft airbrush. That's basically it. So the reason for that is I like the hard small brush to do texture details and the soft brush to do like atmosphere stuff. So depending on the painting, depends how much of the atmosphere kind of thing I do. So probably not so much in this one. So the technical pen you'll see is the only brush I use. You will see that I don't really change my brush because I'm not changing my brush. That's not cut out. I just don't do that. So if I'm doing anything that's reasonably large, I'll use the color fill and just get on with it. It's an awesome tool in Procreate, and they've done an amazing job with this color fill thing. I'm not sure I'm using it as they intended, but I don't care. It works great. I've tried this in other apps in like on Windows and stuff, and they always have sort of a version of it, but it's nowhere near as good as Procreate. So that doesn't mean you can't do this in other apps. Don't worry about the app. It's not a big deal. You can do this in anything. It's just maybe it's just not so efficient. So what I'm trying to do in the background is it's almost impossible to read the background and understand what's going on in the background. So what I'm really trying to do is just have a variation of shapes and color. And I'm not really looking at the reference and thinking, there's a billion shapes. How do I do them? Well, you don't. You just kind of come up with, randomness until it looks, something like foliage. So I'm on the path now, and I'm talking about this after I painted it. I painted it like an hour ago, and it's on my PC now, so I'm watching it back like you are. And I definitely didn't get this path right. I mean, it gets more right as I go along, but it's still not quite right. It's more orangey, but it's a subtle orange. This, like I said at the start of this painting, this video, that this painting was really hard, like really hard. And I don't mind that. I'm not trying to pick easy paintings. When you do something, when you pick a really hard painting, it's kind of, it hurts your head a little bit, but you will take something out of it. Mostly for me, I don't know about you guys, tell me in the comments, but I mostly learn what not to do. It's like, okay, that didn't work, so don't do that again. Mostly when it works, I kind of forget those, but I definitely don't forget when it doesn't work. And just like, man, don't do that again, because that was terrible. So I learned a lot in this paint, and I learn a lot more when it goes wrong than when it goes right. So I learned that my process doesn't work for everything. My main process is like identify the big shapes and break the shapes down. Now it did work, and it kind of works, but maybe it doesn't work so great for these kind of paintings because there is no massive identifiable shapes. But it's you still got to do something. You still got to start somewhere. So big to small seems like still a good, process for me. But while I'm talking about that, what I'm doing right is I'm pretending there's no foliage whatsoever, and then I'm putting the background in there, and then I'm putting the trees in, and then layering on top and on top and on top. So if you can imagine, I pretend there's nothing there, and 100 meters in front of me there's X, and then I paint that, and then 80 meters in front of me there's something else, and then I paint that, and 60 meters, and so on until I get to the front. So I kind of just imagine I'm standing on this path, and I think I try to make it a bit more 3D in my head before I try and paint it. Now, I know that sounds kind of nuts, but I look at the reference for, if I'm using reference, I don't always use reference because sometimes I just make things up, but if I'm using reference, I do look at the reference for quite a while before I start painting. Now, when I say quite a while, I just mean a few minutes. I look at it and analyze it, and I think, how do I break this up? How do I understand what's going on? What is going on? What's the most important thing? Where's the contrast? Where's the color contrast? Is, the difference between the orange and the green? So we got that orange thing in the top right. How do I get that in? So I think about it a lot before I start. Okay, maybe not a lot, in like a few minutes or something, I'll look at it. But I'll analyze it, and I'll kind of break it up in my head. You could probably do that I think, I see some people talk about like thumbnail sketches and things. Maybe that's how some people analyze it and break it down. Maybe that's what the thumbnail process is for. I've tried the thumbnail process many times. It's not for me. It doesn't really help me. I would say it actually confuses me more than actually helps me. So just because somebody says a process is a good thing doesn't mean it actually is any use to you whatsoever. So as much as I'm saying I break it down into big shapes, small shapes, detail, or whatever, that might not work for you. So just mess around, give it a go, and see if it works for you. And if it doesn't, I have seen people go mega detailed and mega, rendered, in a little part of the painting, and then do it again into the other part of the painting. And they just finish a little, piece of the painting, and then finish other pieces as they go along. Now, I think it all depends on how your brain works, and how you can put it together in your brain, in your mind, because you do have to imagine what's going on. As much as we're copying, we're not really copying. So don't think like, okay, this is there, I have to copy that. That's not quite true. You have to paint in layers. So obviously it's one 2D layer, but you still have to paint from back to forward generally in landscapes. Like, you don't have to, but I suggest it's not a good idea to go the other way around, because we're layering on top and trying to make it look 3D. So, I mean, we have to pretend, we have to start at the back and move our way forward, especially a painting like this when there's so many things on top of each other. And digitally, that's very good because obviously we have all the layers. Without layers, this would be very difficult. I mean, it's hard enough as it is, but without the layers, it'd be even more difficult. But find what process works for you. And how you do that is you just mess around. You follow my process. Maybe you go watch another person do it completely different on a different video. Then try theirs, and whatever kind of feels right, then stick with those, or stick with that, and then massage it into your process. Because my process is like a bunch of different people that I've watched and learned from over the years. So I've taken a bit from there, a bit from there, a bit from there, and then I kind of get my own. It's like I've never seen any people use the color fill, tool like this. But I have seen them use the color fill tool to do something else, and I thought, oh, that'd be cool. I'll take that color fill and I'll use it for more stuff. So until like a year or so ago, I didn't even know this color fill thing existed. So I was painting basically everything with a brush, and looking back, that would drive me nuts now because I can get these big shapes in without using the brush. And the brushes are great, but they're not that accurate. So the color fill thing is great. But I'm not going to say the color fill tool is easy, though. It's not, because if you get the shape wrong, it kind of sucks. So it might look great, but it might not be for you. And that's cool. So anyway, I digress to random stuff, but there's not a whole lot to explain with this painting that I'm doing here. Really, what I'm trying to do is add lots of texture. Usually I'm painting mountains and paths and open areas, and when you have open areas, the texture detail is not that important because once you zoom out, you don't really see that much detail. But this is a close view, so we've only got 50 feet or something. So when you're 50 feet and you can't see any further, you have to have a lot of texture because, if you're standing there, you could see it all. But usually I paint, like a mile or 2 miles or 3 miles or whatever. So you only need detail in the bottom couple of inches of your painting because that's the only realistic amount of detail you would see. But when we got 50 meters or something like that, you're going to see it all. So you basically have to texture the entire thing. Now, the only thing texture means is, it doesn't look the same color all the time. Now, you could use different brushes. I have nothing against that. You could use texture brushes to do the rocks and the whatever, but it's not for me. I've tried them many, many times, and the problem is you're gonna get it looking like too much like a pattern, and then you have to break the pattern anyway. So I would prefer just to do it manually, and it doesn't take that long. I'm speeding up this little pattern section here, and 4 times. All right, so it took me 5-10 minutes or whatever, but that's not the end of the world, is it? So and this painting is 4,000 by 4,000 pixels, by the way. So, it's pretty big. And you can get that texture in 5-10 minutes. I'm sure if you use a brush, you could do it in a couple of seconds. But, it wouldn't be unique then. And, it wouldn't kind of be yours. Which, I don't know about you guys, but in this AI age where you can't tell what the hell is real or whatever, I'd rather have, my mistakes on there and make it look human, so don't get me wrong, I love AI, it has its uses, it's a tool, so I don't want to go down that road, but AI is here to stay, but that's not going to stop us painting, or hopefully it doesn't stop anybody painting, because it's irrelevant what the hell AI does. We want to know what people do, and people make cool shit. And AI, makes cool shit, but it's kind of, soulless. So anyway, what I'm trying to do here is when I use the color fill tool, it tends to, make some sharp edges, which is great sometimes when you're doing mountains or, like bits of trees that I'm doing now, which is great. But when you're doing foliage, you kind of get like some straight edges, even if you want them or not. So one very important thing is to make sure you get rid of those sharp edges. Foliage is just absolutely impossible to have sharp edges. So, make sure you just break that up into other bits, and then you'll be okay. Like I said, I painted this, like an hour ago or something. I have no idea what I'm doing with that path. I don't know why it's kind of greeny at the back. I hope I fixed that. I can't remember if I did. It needs to be a bit more brown. And I think I could have done with a bit more. Ah, there we go. I did fix it. Well done. So the path was a struggle, and I didn't get it. The light's not too bad, but I could have done, I am putting a little bit of orange in now. So, yeah, okay, that's not too bad. It's not too bad. It's getting a little bit better. But it's kind of wishy-washy at the back. That is probably needs to be a bit more saturated. The back needs to be a bit more saturated as well. One thing I struggle with, I have an iPad Pro, the latest one, 13, and I got the nano screen. I'm not sure if that really matters, but it's very saturated, like really saturated, which is cool. The colors are really, really vibrant. But by the time I put on my PC, it kind of dulls down, and so it's kind of hard to match it. So when I'm watching the video back, I'm like, shit, that should have been more saturated. But when I look at it on my iPad, it's crazy saturated. So that's kind of annoying. But you're never going to match, when you're swapping from phone to phone or PC to whatever. It changes quite a lot. But I'm not using that as an excuse. The path is still not right. I'm trying to paint. I have about 100 paintings that I've lined up, and this is number 5 in the series. So I have another 95 paintings that I'm painting in this kind of style. And I know there's another few of these forest ones with roughly the same path. So I did that on purpose because I want to make sure that I learn something. And the next time I come to this type of painting, I'm going to make sure that this path, well, I'm not going to say I'm going to nail it because, you can't guarantee that. But I'm going to make sure that the path is, slightly better. Sometimes what I do there is I'll bring this into Photoshop or something like that, the reference, and I'll color pick the colors I'm struggling with just to look and see what happens. Okay, that's about it. This one was really tough, but a good lesson. If you want to see, what I come up with next, subscribe and like, and I'll see you in the next one.